Hi everyone, it is October 10th, 2018, and this is in response to your week 6 discussion board posts about the Kenneth Burke reading, especially the common questions y'all asked, particularly about opinion, what he means by opinion, and the divisions of rhetoric, um, deliberative, epidictic, and forensic. If it looks like I'm tired, I'm really tired. I'm sure y'all can all relate. We identify on that point, right? I thought your posts were great, and I love the examples you gave. Um, One that I think is easy for us to use in illustrating these concepts is the example. I can't remember who gave it now, but it was a teacher, a head of an English department, I'm thinking, maybe Ashley. And she works with other teachers to try to figure out what kind of evaluation or curriculum that they're all going to implement at a certain point in the semester. So they're working together, they have ideas, they're kind of competing ideas, but she says in that situation, they're really coming together to answer common question. They are collaborating towards a common goal. They're not there to win out, to win the competition. And so I think that is an important distinction, some would say, between rhetoric and philosophy. In Kenneth Burke, this is page 52, he says, and he's really referring to the classic rhetoricians, as most of you noted in your reading questions and in your discussion board posts. He is talking about persuasion. So he says, since persuasion so often implies the presence or threat of an adversary, there is the agonistic or competitive stress. Agonistic means fighting, having like antagonism. So there were some back in the classical period who accused speech makers or rhetoricians or those who taught rhetoric of just teaching people how to win. Think of lawyers, like just teaching people how to win any argument, no matter what is true, but just kind of fighting to win. So that's what some people believed about rhetoric and people who taught rhetoric. And then he says dialectic is seen as the opposite of rhetoric. Actually, that's Aristotle, and I'm getting that wrong. Counterpart. Rhetoric is the counterpart of dialectic. Dialectic means like those Socratic, Platonic dialogues where a group of people are talking something out and they're trying to get to the truth of some issue. As if the truth could be found about any concept, like what is beautiful, what is love, these abstract concepts that Socrates liked to debate people about. So Burke is drawing our attention to the fact that, and Plato, he's getting this from Plato, like on the bottom of 53, he says this process of starting from opinion and trying to get to the truth of something is a process that's purely verbal. Hence, in Aristotle's view, it would be an art, not a science, since each science has its own particular extra-verbal subject matter. Science has truth that's not derived from words. The Socratic method was better suited for each linguistic enterprises as the dialectical search for ideas of justice, truth, beauty, and so on, than for the accumulating of knowledge derived from empirical observation and laboratory experiment. And this is similar to when when Burke goes into this on the next page by saying some questions don't have a true, false, yes, no, strictly scientific answer. A lot of questions don't have those kinds of answers, like which curriculum, which method of assessment should we implement for our students. There's no there's no way that you can scientifically provide an answer to that question. You have to kind of try out ideas amongst your group. Like one person could say, we're going to do this, but if you're using rhetoric to persuade a group of people, then each person is going to come up with their ideas, and if they're really engaged and want to arrive at the truth or the best solution for something, then their opinions will hopefully add up to something that is more true or just a better solution than what one person could come up on their own. And y'all provided a lot of examples for that, which was pretty cool. So, as that's a preface to when on page 54, Burke says, rhetoric is properly said to be grounded in opinion. Rhetoric, not science, not philosophy. Kind of philosophy. But we think that the relation between truth and the kind of opinion with which rhetoric operates is often misunderstood. By we, he says, I think the relationship is misunderstood. And the classical texts do not seem to bring out the point we have in mind. Namely, the kind of opinion with which rhetoric deals in its role of inducement to action is not opinion as contrasted with truth. Because it's grounded in ideas people have to try to come up with solutions to complicated problems that science can't solve, that there's no empirical answer about it. There is no scientific truth that someone can do measurements and figure out the truth of something, like what to do. Clearly, the numbers add up to this, so we should do this. There aren't always answers like that. So people have to use words to, offer their opinions or their plans or their hunches. I think someone used that in their answers, which was good. To solve a problem. When it says opinion in this ethical sense, clearly falls on the bias across the matter of truth. In the strictly scientific sense, that's not bias like having opinion before you know the data, or refusing to listen to a side that you already think you disagree with. That's like, if you've ever done any sewing or work with fabric, it's like not cutting across the bias means kind of cutting diagonally. That's the way I think about it. Not in the line of the fabric against the grain. Yeah, against the grain of meat, against the grain of wood, against the way fabric goes. So don't mistake that part for the type of bias that like news organizations are accused of. And a lot of you picked up on a really important quote from this section that's on page 55. It's under the section that says identification, but he talks about it all through there, and he switches topics and he kind of meanders. But this is a really important one on 55. You persuade a man only insofar as you can talk his language by speech, gesture, tonality, order, image, attitude, idea, identifying your ways with his. So, like I started out saying, I'm tired. You probably have experienced being tired before. So that's something we have in common, and that's, a way to start out a speech, or just point out common ground. Like, we're humans, we're adults. When you do work, we get tired. So I did kind of meander in my answer to what is opinion, but I hope, and so some of you wrote about how you can lie. Like, if you know that there's truth to a situation, and you lie about it, that's contrasted with truth. Also, if you kind of pander to your audience and you know that something they believe is not something good or something true, you can still identify with them and try to convince them to come around. Okay, so I hope that makes the opinion part more clear. And then several of you also asked about epideictic rhetoric or how to decide if something was deliberative or forensic or epideictic. And I would just say, don't worry about classifying any statement or any, definitely not any whole text as one or the other, because like so many of you pointed out, a rhetor, a speaker, a writer, they're using those like interconnectedly, because in order to, like a speech someone makes, they are going to be using the past for examples. They'll use like honorable or dishonorable figures from the past to praise certain values. And they'll also look to the future. They might be sort of subtly and non-verbally communicating that they are in favor of something, maybe in favor of like something to vote on later, or just to change your mind about something, even though it's ostensibly a funeral oration or a speech at an award ceremony. People don't, you don't think about when you're speaking, whether it's to persuade or not, like, is this deliberative? Is it forensic? Is this epidictic right now? How should I be doing this communication? So don't worry too much about labeling things. Like a lot of these principles, sometimes it's useful when analyzing a text, and sometimes they're not really useful. So that's what I have to say about that. And I also was rereading this and think it's funny that Burks is saying about Aristotle, because Aristotle had to count and classify everything, and usually it was in a group of three. So Aristotle said forensic looks to the past, deliberative looks to the future, and it needed to have something in the present, and it's kind of a catch-all. So he said, and there's epidictic, that's the rest. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to respond to your really entertaining examples and some of the questions that kept coming up. I am going to go on a grading spree and grade your papers in the next couple of days, and I expect good things from them. And I think I moved a video I recorded last year into the Week 7 module, outlining how, not the paper that you just wrote, but all the other projects you're doing should be aligned with each other as a case study in demagoguery. One person has already emailed her idea for a text to use, and that's great. I would like to okay those with you, but if you don't have time or you forget, it's not all the way necessary. But I would like for you to run those ideas by me, because I know the assignment and the assignment sequence and what will work. Okay, I'm really, really tired. I want to go home, and I look forward to reading your papers.